Thank you very much for inviting me to present today for the DailyDOOH, and at London being the place to be. A lot of the people in this room I see at a number of conferences and have done over the years, not just in London but around the world. And the first thing I'd like to say is that I do think that this gathering is a sort of seminal moment for the industry and a really important gathering for all the people that are stakeholders within the industry. And like any gathering of a large number of people, the choice really is whether or not you choose to do anything with the collaborative, collective, to try and change things for the future, or whether it's just another conference where you shook a few hands, and walked away. My bet is that a year from now there'll be about 3 times as many people at this venue, and actually Adrian and the team will be turning people away, because people will recognise that there is a collective power in what digital out of home can do, a force for good for both our industry, the outdoor industry and the advertising industry as a whole. So if you take nothing away from what I'm about to say, please take away this, that if we get together collaboratively, as you've seen there with Art of Outdoor, and change our behaviours going forward, there is a huge prize for us all. I've been asked to talk about and lay the ground rules for a debate around whether or not growth for digital out of home is pure growth, and actually talk about the thorny subject of whether or not it might be cannibalization for the outdoor sector as a whole. And then the second part of my presentation is to stimulate debate around whether or not there can be some kind of manifesto for the industry that may help us address some of those challenges as a collective and forge ahead in a slightly different direction than the one that we're currently on path with. Now, it will of course depend on your point of view. So for some people in this room, cannibalization is a significant problem. For some people in this room, it doesn't really bear thinking about. But as a collective, it is something that we do face as a challenge. In fact, I was talking to an investment banker from Goldman Sachs earlier who'd done a lot of analysis on this particular issue. And I think for all media owners, when you know that you've got people representing your interests, really deep diving into what is going on in our sector, that somebody somewhere is looking closely, and watching how we choose to act and behave and which path we're going to take, the path of growth or the path of cannibalization. And I mean that as a collective of outdoor industry owners, not just digital. But before I go into my pitch or not, or pose the questions and ask you to decide whether I'm right or wrong, I'm just going to play a short clip and case study from Twitter and Nokia. Last week, I called up Bruce Daisley, who you're going to hear from later, the Managing Director of Twitter, and I asked him this question. I said, Bruce, how do you define what medium Twitter is? First question. And secondly, who is it you're targeting? And he gave me this answer, and it's a direct quote. Well, we don't really think like that at Twitter. Sometimes, though, Tim, we talk about Twitter being something that glues other media together. I thought that was a really, really interesting thing for him to say. And for those who know Bruce from Twitter, you'll know he's no twit. In actual fact, it's an incredibly clever strategic positioning for Twitter as a brand, because the size of their prize is £18 billion. So it doesn't matter what money gets spent on advertising, Twitter can have a conversation. They're not pigeonholed in any market or anywhere else. They're saying, if you're doing advertising of any sort, we're the glue. You have to talk to us. Now, of course, they've got global momentum and the media on their side and lots of other things. The fact of the matter is they haven't restricted themselves to any part of any subsector They've gone for the whole lot. We're the glue for all media. Now, that's an £18 billion prize. So I want to talk about what is the size of prize, perhaps, for our industry of outdoor and digital out of home. On the surface of it, things look pretty good. This is the growth in percentage terms, a chart I often see presented within the industry of digital out of home's share of outdoor. Okay? I don't think we should care one jot about digital out of home's share of outdoor. Why are we obsessed with this? I don't think we should be. Because this is us saying one segment within our segment is growing really, really fast. So the answer to that question, growth or cannibalization, as you'll see from these charts, is 100% a large proportion of cannibalization. So are we looking at the right sector? And I've picked out this group because I think potentially what we should be doing and should be looking at is the all-screen sector. I've been at a number of media agency presentations over the course of the last couple of weeks, and those, many of you will know, they're setting up AV units. They're bringing together all the trading across their mobile, TV, broadcast platforms, online. They're changing the way in which their planners and buyers behave to be able to do full multi-screen planning. And yet, digital out of home, they're not quite sure where to put it. And actually, this sector is a really important sector because over the course of the next 10 years, as forecast by all of the major media buying points, WPP, Omnicom, and Aegis, I want to spare them all their blushes in terms of who gave me the data. The fastest growing sector is going to be all screen. So digital out of home is going to grow, out of home is going to grow, but the place where all the money is going to go to, all that money that is being transferred from old media, a lot of it predominantly print, is going into the all screen sector. The media agencies have decided that that is the future for advertisers, both from a media planning perspective and from a strategic commercial perspective. And what does that look like? Well, the purple line is digital out of home as a share of outdoor, which is forecast by 2020 to be 45% of every pound that's spent on outdoor. The red line is our share of all screen. And it's good news for digital out of home because our share of all screen as digital is also set to grow. But it's not great news for outdoor overall, okay? Because in spite of incredible growth within that confined sector, overall the medium of the fast-growing pot of outdoor is set to decline. And these are big numbers. There's good reasons for it. I said to the Goldman Sachs, it's not that outdoor isn't going to grow. We're going to grow. It's a question of how fast we're going to grow. Because all the sure-faced favourites money is going on the screen sector to grow the fastest. Digital out of home to grow the fastest within it, but we're sat and pigeonholed in a sector that's set to grow the lowest within that. And that is big numbers that we're going to miss out on over the course of the next 6 years. So let's have a look at them. I just did some rough maths to sort of give us an idea of what the size of the prize might be. So if we were to say, as a collective, digital out of home doesn't want to take 4.2% of all screen by 2020, we'd just like to take around 5% of all screen by 2020. That is worth another £100 million to be shared out by everybody in this room. Just 0.8%. So what would we rather have? 45% of all outdoor or 5% of all screen? And does a 0.8% share growth versus what the agencies are predicting feel ambitious? At 7.5%, we're nearly a £2 billion industry as outdoor overall. Interestingly, the orange chart is what happens if outdoor sets itself a target, including digital, to hold share against that fast growth sector of all screen between now and 2020. If we take the predictions that the industry set us and then say, actually no, outdoor's not going to cannibalise, we've found a solution to that, we're a 1.5 billion marketplace. Now these things may or may not come true and they're just numbers, but I am certain, 100% certain, in the same way that TV and radio has thrived separate of each other since the invention of TV within the broadcast sector all those years ago, that a real focus on the skill sets of each of those individual things that sit in the category overall of outdoor, when you add them both together, would end up with a larger number. But you can see the numbers and you can do the analysis yourself, and I'm quite happy to share it with you. So that brings me to the question of a manifesto for digital out of home. Now, it's quite a difficult one for me to address this with most of my competitors and colleagues and some collaborators in the room. So I thought I'd do it in a way and say to you up front, look, I'm not saying that these are the questions, and I'm not saying that this is what you have to do. This is just my interpretation of some of the questions I think if we asked ourselves as a collective and got the right answers and then acted upon those answers as a collective, I think we would end up in a better place. I've used some ocean examples as to how we're tackling them, and one or two examples from elsewhere. So the first one, do we understand the unique benefits of our product and its value to clients? I think this is really, really important. And I was talking to one of the developers of the new taxi digital signage that's coming over the course of the next few years. And he said to me, yeah, cannibalization, that's a really interesting topic, Tim, because that's what's going to happen in our sector. He's actually talking about taxi digital, cannibalizing taxi digital. The world has gone mad, okay? What we have to do as a collective is we have to work out what is the unique benefit of our product, who are the advertisers that can most benefit from it, and then individually and together go out there and build that unique business base. Just like any media brand has done over the last 20 years, from Classic FM to talkSPORT to Channel 4 to Sky Sports. Okay? They start and go, where are we most relevant? How can we build a relationship with an advertiser that's about what I have to sell? Not about what other people are doing, not about all the money that other people are taking. What is it I can offer? Because if each of us here can offer something unique and different to an advertiser, okay, we will grow, we won't cannibalize. Here's just an example of a screen at Canary Wharf, highly targeted, lots of very, very, very wealthy people under the age of 40, where we did just that, courtesy of VCCP and Open.
Bruce McLaren couldn't rest on a laurel if he tried. So how could we?
There aren't many places where you can advertise a £200,000 multi-car, but who would have thought it would be on digital out of home? But somebody had to make that call, spot that opportunity, see that relevance, and think about what is it we've got that's unique and which advertiser is it most unique to. The second question is, are we developing a footprint and plan to place the most powerful screens in the most powerful locations? Developing a broadcast dynamic media platform, I'm going to say controversially, but I don't think it's controversial, is not the same as developing billboards and poster sites. And so if you start from the same place as that, you're going to end up with some situations that perhaps are painful to your bottom line. So recognizing what that footprint looks like, and over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, building that footprint out, taking reference to what route data is saying, and more important than anything else, is there advertiser demand? And have we asked the advertiser about the way in which we're developing and building out our platform? And here I think some interesting thoughts, and I think powerful thoughts for the medium from an advertiser.
When you're working in a medium like ours, and one in particular with animation, where you've just got such scope available to you in terms of what you can do on screens, it becomes an essential part of a campaign mix now, I think, because a national static footprint is very important, but it's really about impact. And I think the quality is what's essential. When you work with animation studios like Pixar, producing content at the very highest level, you want that creative to be reflected on the best possible canvas. And I think having a digital footprint in these key cities where we're reaching a critical mass with a very, very strong cut-through creative of a high quality is absolutely vital to our campaign.
That's just one advertiser who's got very strong views about our medium and digital out of home. I'm glad we listened to him. The next one is a slightly trickier subject, and I suppose is at the kernel of the point that I'm trying to make. And that is, how do we ensure we're fully integrated and accepted within the wider screen family? Not exactly in this very room, but about 3 or 4 weeks ago, something called Advertising Europe. Some of you will have attended that conference, and you'll be pleased to know they also chose BAFTA so that I could walk 5 minutes from my office as well. Thank you for that, Dirk. But they held a conference here for the whole industry, Advertising Europe. And it was a brilliant conference because you weren't tied to coming in for one day. You could pop in and out. You could schedule your business day around it. And so I was looking for things on there that I know were relevant to me, could help with my learning, things that I could spot that I thought would be of interest. And I spotted a subject on there being presented by the IAB called omniscreening. I thought, okay, omniscreening. They must be talking about all screens. I've got strong views about that. I'll go and listen to what they've got to say. Omniscreening, apparently, is about zero downtime, and it's about multi-screens. And basically what they're saying is that screens are such an intrinsic part of our lives now, they're pretty much the same as our fingers and our thumbs. We can't live without them, and we spend all day on them or with them in some way, shape or form, right, even to the point where they showed a video of Bruce Daisley walking down the street, tweeting as he went. And I listened, and I listened, and I listened, and I listened. And it's probably about 2/3 of the way through, I thought, do you know what? This presentation is not going to mention what I consider to be the omnipotent screens of omniscreens, and that is digital out of home. And I think this is important because when it comes to the smartphones and the tablets have done a great marketing job. Because in home, they'll talk to you about dual screening. And out of home, in our space, they'll say they're the first screen. Really, really clever stuff. But surely, digital out of home, in the out of home market digital screens, we have to be the dual screen option. And I think telling our story within the agencies and the planning mix about where we sit within that wider screen family is going to be really, really, really important going forward. There's nothing that you can do now on a tablet, pretty much, that you can't do on a good proportion of either the screens that sit in people's plant in this room here, or indeed some of the technology businesses like Live Poster and Grand Visual that are integrating with those screens. But there is something fundamentally different about a digital out-of-home screen from those other screens. So when I talk about omniscreening and omnipotent, let's not forget that when it comes to the jungle, we are the biggest cat within it. And again, I would argue, to a degree, we're excluded. And what we have is incredibly powerful. It's been proven to be powerful by neuroscience and other studies from other media owners. But surely by galvanising those studies together, we'll be able to make this point even more vociferously. And that is that these powerful screens in these places that dominate their landscape, they do force and change, human behaviour, and that's an important part of the screen mix. And some of these spectacular screens, I suppose, if Game of Thrones is the in-home water cooler moment, then surely large format digital out-of-home is the out-of-home water cooler moment. Cara Delevingne, 1.6 million followers, tweeted, Bear Grylls 1.1 million, apparently. And of course, a separate issue which we're not going to discuss today, is how do we monetize that? Because we currently get nothing for it. The next one is just a question around accountability. And do we have industry ubiquity? And I think this is one of the easiest things for us to address that could have, on paper, the greatest effect. But actually, on grass, it's the most difficult thing to execute because of all of the different vested interests that we have as a collective. But industries that are in similar sort of stages to us and in their infancy have managed to come together and tackle these problems, and make great strides. So it's definitely something that we should look really, really closer at in trying to find a common language around our share of voice, loop length, spot length, day part, copy delivery, clearance, play-out reports, and of course, route. There are many advertisers out there that will move big chunks of money into digital out of home if we could address maybe 3 out of 6 of the things on that list. I had lunch yesterday with a lady in the audience, Jill Reed, who represents a lot of those advertisers. And for her, this was the most important thing. If you can fix that, Tim, as a collective, we can really make some great headway. The next one is route. How do you target an AB male, 25 to 35, living in London, driving a £50,000 car? The answer's probably not the Metro. It's probably not ITV. It can't be mobile, unless you're prepared to go to jail. We can now build stories that are credible in the wider media landscape and compete in that language, of audience and data. Whatever we might say about the gremlins, this is the fact in comparison to where we were 5 years ago. And my question really is, why aren't we doing it? And because of some of the questions that have been asked of me over the last year or so, I've been doing a little bit of snooping around the auditors. We had one visitor yesterday. I've been on all the auditors' websites. I'm meeting with all the auditors to talk to them about some of this common parlance that I think, can benefit Ocean, but importantly can benefit the industry as well. I was absolutely shocked. These people are responsible for large advertiser pitches, advising clients on where to place their money, where not to place their money. Okay? And have we created a relevant lexicon between us that's common, that people can understand for our own industry, for digital out of home, not for posters? Here's one example. It made me want to weep. Okay? This is the website of Slick. Okay? I think they've got about 20% market share as a media auditor. And they talk about route and all these fantastic things and how we can audit your campaign, etc., etc., etc. And there it is right at the top. Sheetage by region. A word that's banned at Ocean, by the way. Now, whether you're more old outdoor than new outdoor, wherever you might be, this is an irrelevant phraseology to our industry. This is not something we ever want to be associated with. And we can't be, if we're going to grow fast in that slipstream of all screen. So again, I think we've got some work to do around the lexicon that we use and educating people to think about us and talk about us in an appropriate way. My final question is just around the creative community. And we've built things and put products out there that we're only just beginning to understand the power of. And if we're only just beginning to understand it, you can rest assured there are people within the food chain that understand it a lot less than we do. So I think engaging the creative community, educating them, is going to be very important in terms of forcing that line of growth as opposed to cannibalization. This year will be the 5th anniversary of Ocean's digital creative competition, and we're going to make a big thing of it. The reason we're going to make a big thing of it is it's going to be the last that we do on our own. So my commitment to everybody in this room today, providing that every media owner puts something up of their own, okay, that the digital creative competition will be an all-industry event from 2015. But you decide. Because if you don't all put something in, we won't put this part of our collateral in as well. What we found in this is the technology is ahead of the creative. So we had the creative director from WCRS, the creative director from BBH, creative director from M&C Saatchi, and we showcased things, and some of your work that was entered in this competition, and they sat around that table and went, bloody hell, we had no idea what we could do and how we could use it. So even with a grand visual or a live poster, all the work we're doing as individuals doesn't get us the bang for our buck we would get as a collective we have addressed this issue. It is so hard to cut through, and yet it is so important if we're going to address that cannibalization or growth point. Because having a dialogue with the creative allows you to talk about lapsed advertisers, you can talk to new brands, you can talk to your traditional advertisers who want to experiment in a different way, and you can create that unique business base. So those are my 6 questions, and you can probably tell from the way I've pitched this that I believe it's something that we should have, but I'm not in charge. Those literally are just the views of Tim Bleakley. So you can choose to ignore them, or choose to get on board. But I think the best way of perhaps galvanizing people is always a good client case study. So I'd like to show you a case study of someone who has a digital out-of-home manifesto and has decided it's growth, not cannibalization. Digital out of home being the lead medium for Google as a brand and out home. Why is that? Because they're digital and the majority of their customer interactions and product use occurs out of home, driven by location. So of course we would be the lead medium, wouldn't we? But how many times have we as a collective established that one line that I've just come out with, to a group of advertisers, to explain to them, what we're all about in order to drive that growth? And with Google Glass coming down the wire, believe me, we are competing in a sector of people who understand the space that we occupy from a digital perspective. Some could argue a lot better than we do. So it's ironic that Adrian would put me up here for this opening gambit. Tim Bleakley, one of the industry's renowned collaborators, someone who genuinely goes into bat for all the time, rather than winding people up about different industry issues. But actually, I can recognise the value of this. If we create and innovate, importantly, and collaborate, we can take that either 5% of all screen or hold our share in that fast growth sector, and that is worth hundreds of millions to people in this room. Thank you, and please do sponsor me on my run in the Hackney Half Marathon. There we go.